Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. Today we are going to look at functions in Go. We will look at what functions are, how to create them, and how to call them. We will look at function parameters and return values. And we also look at some best practices for writing functions. So we will ask why functions are important. Now functions help us break big tasks into reusable pieces, just like following a recipe in the kitchen. Now, what is a function? In simple explanation, I will say a function is a reusable block of code that performs a specific task. Cooking recipe, for example. Instead of writing down the steps for boiling a rice every time you cook it, you just say boil rice and it will just perform that process for you. So the steps for boiling the rice, which is the function, are already defined and you just call them. So a function in Go is like a named recipe that can be reused anytime. Without functions, we write the same code repeatedly. So with functions, we can write it once and reuse it multiple times. So how to write a function in Go? So let's start. Let's call our package. Okay. So in writing a function, we start with a function and we shorten it as func, F-U-N-C. Yes, then you write the name that you are giving that specific function. So let's say greet. Then you bring your parentheses, then your curly braces. Then inside it, we can print, call our format package. It will automatically import it for you. Then, hello, welcome to Golang. Okay, good. So now this is the function that we have created. So we are going to call that function within our main function, which is the main with the main name. So inside this function, this is the main function because it bears the name of the entrance of the package name. So this is where Go compiler comes. So when the compiler comes into this function, then he will come and we will call the function on top that we just created, and it will go inside that function called greet and it will print the message in there for us. So let's print it and see. Good. Now we see it printed here. Hello, welcome to Golang. So that is how it works, as simple as that. So this specific function called greet performs this function. Anytime you call it, it will print out this message for you. So in our main function, when we call the function over here within our main function, it will go inside there and print the message for us. It's as simple as that. So the key takeaway here that you have to get is that a function must be defined before it can be used. So in our case here, we defined this function first before we were able to use it in the main function. So a function must always be defined first before it can be used. Now let's look at a function with parameters. So what are parameters in the first place? Parameters allow us to pass information to a function. So think of parameters like ingredients in a recipe. Now let's create a new function and let's call it greet user. And in this function, it will take a parameter. So a parameter is simply a variable or an input that you want that specific function you are creating to take. So in our new function here, greet user, we want it to take a parameter called name. and we will specify the type of that parameter that we want this function to take. So we will tell Go that this particular function called greetUser is actually a string. So we'll add that to it, then we'll enter into it. So in this function called greetUser, this is what we want to do. Anytime someone visits or we call this function, we want it to print a message on the console, and in the message we want it to say hello. Let's say hello, and we output the name that that function takes. So let's call it name. Let's bring that name. So the name over here is the name that the function received. Then we pass it into the format print line message. So we say hello name. Then we can add anything to it, like welcome to Golang. Powerful. So that is it. So this is more like a framework. So this greetUser function takes a parameter called name, and we specify and tell Go compiler that that variable that we are passing inside this function is actually a string. So when I hover over it, you see it over here, var name string. So we declare the variable inside the parameter field over here for the greetUser function. So, and it will be used throughout. So anytime you call, so it means that the greetUser function cannot be declared without passing a parameter inside it. So in our main function, when we call the function over here, greetUser, it means that we have to specifically give it a parameter, because the function that we declare over here always take a parameter called name. It always take a variable called name. So when we are using it, we have to insert it into it. So because it is a string, we will give it a quotation, and we will pass it, let's say Ishmael. Let me use my name Ishmael. Good. So that is it. So let's run our program and see. Good. So now this is what we see here. Hello Ishmael, welcome to Golang. Exactly. So when we call this function, it will automatically put this string over here inside the greetUser. So it assumes that the name variable that you have declared here is the Ishmael that is coming. So it will just take it in and automatically output it in the message over here. So that is what we see here. Hello Ishmael, welcome to Golang. Good. So function can take inputs, and those inputs are the parameters that we pass here to make them more flexible. Now, let's look at functions with return values. A function can also return a result instead of just printing it on the console. So, example, a function that adds two numbers and returns the sum. So, let's look into that one also and see. So, let me create a new function over here and give it a name add, and inside it we'll give it parameters a, and as usual we will specify the kind of variable that we are passing into the function. So the a here, I will tell Go that it is an integer, so I'll add int, then it will also take another variable again. So actually you can pass several variables or parameters in a particular function. So I'll also give it another parameter called b, and I'll indicate that that one also is an integer. Exactly. Then we will bring our braces over here. So because we are going to do performance, we are going to return a value over here. So let's say that whenever this function takes a variable a and b, the function should automatically return the summation of those variables. So a plus b. Now, because we are returning the summation of this variables that the function took, we have to specifically, explicitly tell function, the Go compiler, that this function actually should return an integer. So you have to add an integer over here in between the parameter, the closing parenthesis, and the curly brackets over here. So this actually, writing the int over here, tells Go compiler that the return value that we are hoping to receive is actually also an integer. Exactly. So in our main function, we can now pass a variable result. We can declare a variable, and we will say that this particular variable called result is going to utilize the function called add to do a specific task, which is the summation. So we will call the function add over here, and inside it we will indicate that it is taking two parameters, the a and b. So we will give it a real value. So let's say 10 and 22. Good. So as we have declared it over here, so the moment we declare the function name over here, because it is taking two parameters, we have to also pass two variables for it to be able to use it to perform that particular task, which it will return the addition of those two variables. So let's now print it out and see the outcome. Good. So now let's say that the sum is the result. So we call the variable that we have just declared. So when we call the variable, it will automatically go into the function, and with those two variables, it will just go into that function and perform the functionality of returning the addition of those two variables. Good. So as we see over here, it has returned the sum 32. So actually, exactly as the function is supposed to do, it returns the summation of those two variables that we pass into that function, the 10 and the 22. So it will use the 10 and the 22 inside the function, and it will return the summation, the a plus the b. It will return the sum of those two variables. That is great. So as simple as that. So we can see that the function can return values which we can store and use later on everywhere in our code. Powerful. So best practices, you have to keep functions small and focused, and always use meaningful function names, and avoid unnecessary parameters, and use return values when needed instead of printing inside the function. Lastly, let's look at returning multiple values in a function. In this example, we return only one value in that function. So we are going to look at returning multiple values in that same function. So if we are returning multiple values, we are supposed to, as we declared, we told Go compiler that we are returning a singular value, which is supposed to be an integer. So in this case, we are going to tell it that we are actually returning multiple values. So we are telling it that we are returning two values, which both of them are int. So we just separate them with a comma. So int to tell Go that this function is returning two values. So over here we can say that let's say addition. We declare a variable inside this function called addition, and we will say that it returns the sum of the variables that the function took. Then we will declare another variable also inside it, and we say division, or let's say divide, and we will declare that variable and tell Go that this variable is also returning the division of those two variables. So a divided by b. Good. So and we will return both of them at the same time. So we return both values, so addition and the divide. Exactly. So you see it over here. We are returning both the addition and the divide as the outcome, as the two values that the function is outputting. That is why we have to indicate the int in. So which tells Go that the two variables that we are returning, the two values that we are returning are both integers, That is why we include them over here with a comma separation. So now in our main function, let's see how to use that function within our main function. So over here, let's say A for, okay, let's say A for the addition, and we are declaring a variable A, and for the division, let's use D, and say that that should go inside, okay, so that should go inside the function called add, and pass two variables inside it for it. So in this case, let's say 5 and 3. Good. So here we have declared two variables, A and D, and they are supposed to enter the add function that we have created over here with these two variables and calculate inside that add function by, first of all, adding the 2, 5 and the 3, and secondly dividing the 5 and the 3. So let's output our results over here. So let's say the first one is supposed to add. So let's say sum, and leave it like that, and say the sum is the A, and again let's say that the division is also the D over here that we declared. So that is it. So if you look at it from here, the A is going to output the first functionality of the function, which is the addition, A and the B. So the A will return the 5 and the 3 put together and added together, and the D will return the 5 and the 3 divided, so the division. So now let's look at how it will be output on the console. Exactly. So now you see over here. So now we see the sum is 8 and the division is 1. So the sum of 5 and 3 is 8. And the division, if you divide 5 by 3, it goes into it 1. Now, you know that in real life, 5 divided by 3 will actually give us decimal. So why is it returning only 1? The answer is that we told Go compiler that our function is returning two values and both values are integers. So that is how come we wrote int. So we are telling Go that the two values are supposed to be integers. So it will only return whole number. So now if you want it to return the full decimal, we have to indicate and tell Go that the variables that we are taking and the output that it will bring, all of them are float, which are decimal. So let's give it a float. Let's say float 64. Good. And now let's run our program again. Good. So in this case, you see it over here. The sum is 8 and the division is 1.66668. So meaning that we told the Go compiler that the return values are supposed to be float. So in that case, if there is a division and the outcome has decimals in it, it should bring it out. But if you do only integer, it will just output whole numbers. So that is it for functions. So in this video, we learned that functions help us organize and reuse code. We also learned that we can pass parameters to make functions more flexible. And we also saw that functions can also return values for later uses. So What would you like to use functions for in Go? Comment below. And if you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more. Thank you.